welterweight debutants square off and meet in the Octagon in Sydney. We have Hex's big time winner from 2023, the middleweight and then welterweight champ with that promotion. It's France's Kevin Jousset representing City Kickboxing. He's coming in here to take on former Bellator star. It's BDK, Big Daddy, Kiefer Crosbie, and Matt. It feels like forever that Fight Night Picks been talking about Kiefer Crosbie. We started back in 2018 and it was doing interviews and little things with a lot of the Bellator fighters. And that's when Kiefer Crosbie was making his name with that promotion. And wasn't maybe the most awe-inspiring turn that he took over there with Bellator. He's on a little bit of a win streak to start it off, coming in out of Bama. Then he has that illegal knee to the head in his American debut, wins a couple of more, and then loses a few, and Crosbie goes off onto the sidelines. And the weird thing for SBG Ireland's own Crosbie is, not only has he kind of been in the shadow of some of the bigger fighters out of that gym, maybe you think Gunnar Nelson, or of course, Conor McGregor with John Kavanagh and Owen Roddy doing the damn thing in Dublin. But when you look at Dublin's own Crosbie, they tried to bring him down in weight as fights went along. So if you look at him over with Bellator, 2 fights at welterweight, 2 fights at a catchweight of 165 pounds, 2 catchweight fights at 160, and then he moves down to 155 in his final fight with the promotion. It's a losing effort against Georgi Karakhanyan. And if you go back and you watch that fight, Crosbie looking to close the distance. They get up against the cage. Georgie, what's he known as? Bellator's Nick Lentz. That's what he's known as. And Georgie's also a former featherweight, the World Series champ at one point, a longtime Bellator staple as well. But Georgie's trying to jump up against the cage to pull guillotine. He's not able to do it, but in the end, he wins out of the scrambles. He gets Kiefer Crosbie down to the mat, and he finishes him. So Crosbie was off for quite a while. He goes out there and takes on one of the weirdest fights I've ever seen against Brian Law and Joey, who fought on Pride 34, one of my favorite Pride cards. Steve Mazzagatti with a mustache in the background watching. But if you go back and you look at that card, Brian Law and Joe is losing to Shinya Aoki by submission. So you think, okay, here's a guy, kickboxing fighter that fought quite a few years ago, and he's going to fight Kiefer Crosbie. Do I have to sign up for Centurion FC? Yeah, and I felt weird doing it, but I did it. And Kiefer Crosbie walks out to the Rocky Road, the Dublin song by the Dubliners. We've all heard that song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Kiefer Crosbie goes out there. He looks worlds bigger than his opponent, who is a very small, stocky man. I thought his opponent, Brian, looked like a small version of Pessoa, Rafael.
Not take away from that. He's not going to have that luxury in this fight. Like you said, is a big welterweight.
You go back and you watch that fight. Crosby's an orthodox opponent, southpaw, wearing his trunks on one side rolled up to his knees, but on the other side down to his legs, like he's Art Jimerson with the trunks.
So
and
right
Crosbie goes out there, he throws his hooks, he drops his opponent, he gets into a big-time advantageous position, half guard to mount. He's landing elbows into his ground and pound. He gets the win. Crosbie then parlays that forward earlier on this year, takes on Alex Oliveira. You can find that fight with Rise FC. It was their inaugural card on Kiefer Crosbie's YouTube channel. And Alex Oliveira's landed good shots at the start.
But he always does. That's the thing.
Big right cross against Crosbie, but what does Crosbie do? It's a lot of the leg kicks. It's a lot of the hooks. It's a back and forth contest. Crosbie ends up wobbling Alex Oliveira, and then Matt, for about 2.5 minutes, he beats the out of Alex Oliveira, who's on absolute skates. So Crosbie's last action was back in July. In a different sport, it was a boxing fight against Geordie Shore's own Aaron Chalmers. Yep. Kiefer Crosbie, final scorecards in that one, 250-45s and 148-45. Weird card. But Crosbie looked good in that boxing bout, so it'll be interesting to see him moving from the squared arena or squared cage to then back over to MMA. He's a well-trained MMA fighter, but when you go back and you watch a lot of Kiefer Crosbie fights, it really is bite down on the mouthpiece, not necessarily brawl, but he starts off every combo. Left hook, right hook, left hook. So when you watch his fights, they are very entertaining. Sometimes he likes to strike himself into a clinch to get his opponent down. He might have some struggles against Jousset in those respects, but Matt, what can you tell us about Kiefer Crosbie that the fans might not know?
I worry that he's going to be on the receiving end of a lot of the actual leg kicks in this matchup. Not that he can't throw them offensively, but he doesn't really check them either. He will be very heavy on both feet because he does like using those boxing combinations. And for Crosbie, he will have a lot of success with them, but when he does fight a striker who is at least more technical than he is, they have ample amounts of opportunity to get their own counter shots off, and that's what he's going to have to really watch out for in this matchup. He can't just rush forward with reckless abandon, hoping to land some of those shots, because if he does get into a brawl, Jousset has really good leg kicks himself, and he does do a good job of circling off the cage because he's a bigger fighter, so a lot of his opponents do either try to A, take him down because he has a kickboxing background, or B, try to crash that distance, but he has developed some good counters for that, has great knees at the middle as well, but for Crosbie, I do worry about his, susceptibility to eating damage as he does move forward, because if that's how the story of the fight goes, especially early, then Crosby's just going to be eating a lot of shots if he's not able to get that takedown.
And we saw that happen to Crosbie in a second to last loss against Charlie Leary over with Bellator, and that was kind of a short notice type of fight thrown together. Leary's one of those guys that was at a catchweight of 160 that was kind of long in the tooth career-wise, but everybody over in Europe, you know how tough Charlie Leary is, and that's what the commentary talked about.
It was a fight Crosbie probably should have won, though.
Yeah, if you watch it, Crosby's kind of closing the distance. He gets hit by a right cross. He's on Beach Street for a little bit, and he's winning that first round. He was able to do a lot of really good work, but Leary finds himself back into it, and as you watch the round continue, Leary was able to cut up Crosbie, and they end the fight after the first round. They're getting back. They're ready to fight. Todd Anderson brings in the doctor, and there was a little bit of a cut and some swelling around Crosby's right eye, so it was called off. It was a TKO due to doctor stoppage. But when we look at Kevin Jousset, again, this is a guy, city kickboxing. You see him with the Adesanyas of the world and so on and so forth. But when you look at a guy like Jousset, he grew up in France training as a judoka, and he made it very, very far in the country. Junior national bronze medalist in the discipline. He was on the French national judo team. And then when he reached 17, 18 years old, he moved down to Australia. Started training at Absolute Mixed Martial Arts. That's a gym that you're going to see Jenkins out of on this card, and then eventually over to New Zealand to train out at CKB. And when you watch these Jousset fights, Matt, again, he's a guy, I struggle in a couple of respects. Kiefer Crosbie gets hit by long-rangey strikers. Kevin Jousset's striking defense is tall chin, up in the air, hands out. And Jousset doesn't really respond well to his opponents kind of crowding a lot of the distance.
He tries to just meet them halfway with
and
shots,
landing a lot of the hooks. Now, both these guys throw good leg kicks, but you brought it up. Kevin Jousset, kind of like a Jack Jenkins, leg kicks are almost his bread and butter. And if you do get into the clinch, Jousset being a judoka, he kind of waits and waits. Even his opponents, they can hold him back up against the cage. Traditional takedowns can take Jousset down. But when he's able to get some of those Koshi Guruma positions or those odd angle trip takedowns, Jousset really is a master of those. So again, if you look at Jousset's...
I don't know if he's a master of them. He can do them.
If you look at Jousset's record, he has a 2019 finished loss to Jack Della Maddalena, who you've seen go far in the UFC. He also has a split decision loss from a few years ago for the title over with Eternal against Caleb Rideout. It's a split decision loss. I was surprised that Rideout won that fight after going back and watching it, because Jousset does get hit quite a bit, but there was a 50-45 in there, 49-46 all for Rideout. You look at the last three wins over James Crowell, who was 0-1, then Priscus Fulgagnolio, who was 11-1, 39 years old on a 3.5-year layoff, and I thought, okay, this is going to be an easy win. Really, really close fight in that one. And then if you watch Jousset's last fight, I had to buy Fight TV to watch it against Kit Campbell. Campbell wins the first round. Second round's 50-50. And then Jousset's able to get it done with the ground and pound in the third round.
There's one thing Jousset does that I hate. He throws naked leg kicks. Like, he won't set them up with his hands before. He'll just throw. And it can get quite repetitive to where, okay, if he does fight an upper echelon striker welterweight, let's say Jeff Neal somehow gets healthy at some point and ever fights again. He would be able to have a field day with someone like Jousset, just because some of those motions are quite repetitive. So if Kiefer Crosbie can start to time some of those hooks on his entries to land based on some of those naked leg kicks, then maybe he could turn what would become a weakness into something very advantageous for him. I just think the speed is on Kevin Jousset's side, though, so that'll be something I'll really watch for, because I do think from the outside, he's going to be the one landing on Crosbie as he does enter. Now, if Crosbie can get him up against the cage and continue to land from that point, it's a completely different story, but for the most part, apart in the center of the cage. I do think the movement of Jousset's going to give Crosbie some issue, especially early on.
And you'll see that a lot with Crosbie. He wasn't ever the biggest guy at welterweight when he was moving down to lightweight. It didn't work out there. So we'll see how he fills out at welterweight in the UFC. The stats that you see up there, 5'11 to 6'2", 74-inch reach for Jousset to 70 inches for Crosbie. It's Bellator numbers, it's Hex and Eternal numbers. We'll see how they kind of line up in the UFC. But when we have a look at the matchup, Matt, France's Jousset is favored ever so slightly. We have a look at the Tapology vote. Surprised us there to you. You sounded very pro Jousset, so I'm going to say over under 70% for the French fighter here.
I think he's going to win, but I'll put it below 70.
You're going to put it below set? Oh, you sucker. Look at that. So 807 total votes, 69% Jousset, 79% by decision for the 31% that have Crosbie, 43% by decision, 48% by knockout. And if anybody's going to sell this fight, it's not the fighter out of France. Very mild-mannered. Went back and watched an interview he did with La Sueur Plus. And it was interesting to kind of hear some more of his background. But Kiefer Crosbie sells fights. He sold a boxing fight in the main event.
And that's why he's the opening fight on this card.
And that's why
he's a big seller.
He's a big seller, and it's early in Australia. So you have Jousset here.
I do, but I think it's a close fight. Like, both guys have very clear paths to victory. If Crosbie can get on the inside and use some of those boxing combinations, then he has a great chance to win this fight. I just think he's going to eat some damage before he's able to get into those positions. So that's why I have Jousset.
I'm going to go with Jousset ever so slightly. Again, Jousset has poor head movement. He gets hit a lot, and he gets hit by hooks, and Crosbie is able to really crash that distance quickly. So when I do look at this one, it is a tough one, but for me, I'm going to go with France's Kevin Jousset ever so slightly. Let us know. We have it down below in the comment section. Some big-time debuts on this card. The next fight, Matt, Gabriel Miranda is taking on Shane Jung. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fighting Apex, we always say. Let's get into it.